Right. Hello, everyone. I am so happy to be here to share of what I've learned and what I know in the social development sector. So I want to thank the organizers as well for inviting me. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share. So to not take too much of your time, I'm just going to dive right in. So today we're going to be talking about project design for nonprofits. Obviously, to do anything at all in this world, if you're starting from scratch, the process, you can actually call it designing because it's something that's never been done before. So you're wanting to do it to fit a particular mold. So in this case, you're trying to design for maybe a community. You're trying to design for a target group. So, and when you're designing, that means you're putting different elements together, you're seeing what fits, just to make sure that you have the right fit for, whatever purpose that you're designing for. So in this particular case, we're talking about project design for nonprofits. Not to take too much of our time, so we're just going to go into what a project is. So I've written here that a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. So in this case, for nonprofits, it's about creating impact. It's about impact. And if you were a social enterprise or someone that is dealing with social issues and things like that, it could be a product as well, and it could be a service. But it's a temporary endeavor. It's not a project. Is not something that lasts forever. It is usually timed. It usually has a scope, and he has its time, he has a scope, and so it's not something that will last forever. And the purpose of project management is to plan, organize, and manage resources to bring about the successful completion of specific project goals, outcomes, and outputs. So, you most times when you're about to embark on a project, you usually have your resources. Resources are never unlimited, especially when it comes to the nonprofits. When you're in the nonprofit sector, resources are never unlimited. So that means you've got to plan, you've got to organize, and you've got to manage those resources to make sure that the project is completed. It's not okay when you start a project and halfway you're seeing that okay, maybe you don't have enough resources, or halfway you saw that okay, what you planned wasn't really going to work. Because you've got goals and you've got the outcomes, you've got your outputs, you've got your outcomes, you've got the long-term impact and things like that. So in this case, because we're dealing with people, as in it's actually a lot more important for us to really focus and plan such that we're able to get the desired outcomes. So I've written here that projects, they deliver deliverables. So in this case, when we're talking outputs, we're talking about deliverables, things that we can actually see that has been done. So an example would be, say, maybe we have a project to we have a project to train a set of beneficiaries in a community. Our deliverables will go along the lines of saying that these women have they have been trained, and if it was for a product, you have to see the tangible product, of course. If it was for a service, you have to be able to say, okay, this particular thing that we're talking about has been developed, and lead to outcomes, results. So what was the reason why you do what you had to do? So say, for example, you trained people, now those women are trained, maybe 20 women, they have been trained, and of course, you've got all the evidence to show that they have been trained. The outcomes and your results are going to come in. Why did you want them to be trained in the first place? Like, so particular, so they know that I do business and money. So your result, you're starting to see that, okay, from that training, they're actually now starting to make money and things like that. And then, of course, in the non-profit sector, we're going to be using languages like Right. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I think that the recording stopped. So I guess we're continuing now. So I was just talking about project the deliverables and the outcomes. And of course, now I'm talking about stakeholders, so when you're talking about stakeholders, you're talking about everybody that is integral to the success of what it is that you're doing. So you're talking about donors, you're talking about the target beneficiaries, you're talking about, okay, please give me a minute here. Okay, I'm just trying to see if my voice is actually very stable now. Is it clearer now? Can we get a sense of actually if it's clearer now? Can I get a sense of it? Okay, fantastic. All right. So yes. So another thing that I would like to talk about really is, we've got projects, we've got programs, and we've got portfolios. So, in the nonprofit sector, we tend to use the word projects and programs interchangeably. But it's very good if we know what each thing stands for, so that, even if we choose to use those words interchangeably, we know what each stands for, and we're able to have a good understanding of what we're doing. So obviously projects are temporary, right? They're temporary, they're not something that you do forever. But a program is now, to be a set of projects that are right. Okay, I'm guessing my slides are not showing again, so I think I'm going to start sharing my slides again. Okay, so I think my slides are showing again now. So like I was saying, as in the nonprofit sector, it would be nice to actually, know that you're talking about different things. Of course, you can use these words interchangeably, but it's always nice to know exactly what you're talking about when you start talking about it. So projects are different from programs, and programs, of course, they're different from portfolios. So like we've discussed here, a project is usually temporary. It's not something that you're doing forever. And then a program, is a set of interlinked projects, as in they're usually interwoven. They're, they're usually interwoven. They're linked, as in, so you have a set of projects that become a program. And another thing, that we had not talked about here briefly, I would like to touch on activities as well. So your activities are, they're components, they're elements in your projects. So for example, a particular project could have up to, like, say, 4 activities. So we say that we've taken on this project to train a number of women. So the activities could range from, okay, on this day, we're actually taking them, we're training them in on this particular thing, on this particular skill. Today we're taking soft skills, tomorrow we're doing the practical classes. And so you have a range of activities under a project. So of course you have a range of activities on a project, that the range of activities make the project. And interlinked projects make they make programs. They make programs. So it's very, very important to note these things when we're working on our projects. And of course, a portfolio is way bigger than what a program would be. A program will now, a portfolio will now be, programs, in an organization. Now, most nonprofits don't have portfolios yet. So when we're talking about portfolios, we're talking about bigger organizations that actually have a lot of programs. So for, the way it happens is that, an organization could actually have, like, so you've got your objectives and things like that. And from your objectives is where, of course, you draw your activities. So say projects are, okay, I think that's going to lead on to perhaps, our next thing, where do projects come from, right? So projects actually come from, as in, what I've put here is just about 3 things. I'm just going to try and put everything under these 3 subtopics. So projects could come from international NGOs who will now have implementing partners. So say, for example, you have a USAID, or you have maybe a MacArthur Foundation, or you have a Ford Foundation, and then that's an international NGO. So they're coming down here to Nigeria. They have their objectives. They have the things that they want to achieve. With they have their own goal. Of course, they have their vision and their mission. So of course, they've drawn their objectives from their vision, right? And everything they've got. So all their activities are linked to their objectives. This is what they want to do over this period. This is what they want to do. So if they're coming here to Nigeria to, they want to embark on a project, so they could get local partners to help implement the project. For a lot of reasons. Number one, they may not have people on the ground that understand the terrain and things like that. And of course, it's always better to partner with local organizations and grassroots organizations who know more about, the communities, who know more about the targets, the beneficiaries. They know more about the stakeholders, as it makes for, an easier project. So that we have that sort of thing working. And then, of course, we have standalone projects. Right, we have standalone projects where it's you who's decided, like we want to do this in our organization. So it could be an example could be it's not sometimes standalone projects are self-funded by the nonprofit themselves. So of course you have your objectives, and you could think, maybe part of our objectives is to see that, 1,000 students, get to eat lunch for a whole year in school, or something like that. So as in, that can be a standalone project, which could be self-funded. And of course you could have other people funding this for you as well. So we've got that. And then of course we've got grants. When you get grants from international organizations where they've got their objectives, and they want you to do they want to do some things, and obviously they don't have men on ground like we mentioned earlier. So of course they get implementing partners that are going to help implement these projects. So that those are the different ways that a project actually really gets to happen. So of course, as with portfolio management, it usually involves, it's bigger organizations that usually have this. So coming back to the next slide now, the art and science of project management. So of course, we've said here that the secret to success in your interventions is balancing the art and the science of project management. So when we're talking about the art of project management, it focuses on the people elements of the project, and it requires transferable skills that are mostly soft skills, really. It requires leadership skills and things like that, where a project manager is able to lead, empower, motivate, and communicate effectively to the people on the team. So it's the part of the project management where it doesn't really involve anything technical. It's just about your people skills mostly. How do you get to deal with stakeholders? And over the years, of course, I've seen, and not to so getting the balance of it is what matters here. And when you're getting the balance of everything, really, that means that you're either coming, when you're having to get a balance of something, you're either coming from the you're coming from the far side of, from either side of those things. So that means that we're trying to get a fine balance. So most times people tend to be really good, in the art part, and sometimes people are really good in the science part. And what by this I mean, you find people that there are people, have you ever heard people say someone is a people person? They are really good at dealing with people. They know how to deal with people. They're not, you know, they know how to motivate people. They're great leaders. They think of people and things like that. So those kind of people actually have the art. They have the art of it, you know, really well handled, the art part of it. And you find that sometimes they may not be quite as astute when it comes to like the science part of it. So the technical parts of it, you're talking about, you know, budgeting, you're talking about project planning, and, you know, just the project management competencies. You may find that they may not be quite as focused. So every project manager, and of course, in any project, you've got to get these two sides really balanced. Because of course, when you're working with people, you can't get so carried away by, you know, wanting to, you know, just maintain the evenness that the technical part of things is suffering, you know. So maybe the budget is not, you know, it wasn't done like it should have. We are not managing resources like we should. We're not mindful of the scope of the project and things like that. We're letting it run away. So we always need to keep the balance of things if we're to ensure that, you know, we get things done the way they should be done. So of course, there are principles when it comes to, let me not go too deep into project management, but obviously project management is very important when it comes to project design, when it comes to, you know, the implementation of it. So I'm going to go straight down. I'm just really trying to set, you know, a background here about the whole thing. Okay, so here the slide says project implementation. It should be project design. So the elements of project designs, you know, as in when you're designing a project, these are some of the steps that you go through. Maybe this is not everything, but, you know, let's just, for the sake of what we're doing here, let's just go through this. So you've got project identification and definition. You've got the project setup, you've got project planning, you've got project implementation, and then of course you've got closure. Sometimes you can break it down into much more than this when it comes to project design, but not wanting to take too much of our time, so we're just going to delve into it. We're picking the first one, which is project identification and definition. So here we're talking about identifying and defining the needs, as in, so today we're going to be talking about project design, right? And these are the things that we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be talking about identifying and defining the needs for the project. We're going to be talking about data collection. We're going to be talking about the categories of social need. We're going to be talking about social stakeholder identification and analysis. If we've got the time, we'll go into using a Venn diagram. We're going to be talking about problem objectives and solution trees. And we're going to be talking about the current state and the future state analysis. So let's go right into it. So the process of identifying and defining a project should begin with the project team collecting data and information that identifies community needs in the potential intervention area. So most times when we're doing things, right, because mostly we start with passion, we don't really, you know, start this way. So you've just seen that child going to school maybe with bare feet, and you're just really concerned, like, oh, I don't like this, and you want to solve that problem. You've just really seen this woman that maybe she's gone through violence and she's not doing so well, and you just tend to want to respond to it. So while the passion is, you know, a beautiful thing, and it's, you know, it's the feel that you need to keep going, you need to ensure that, you know, you try and rein it in and think about what you're doing before you actually step into it, so that you don't get overwhelmed. So most times we should actually have an intervention, you know, we should actually have a target community. So for example, I have this in mind now. So I am very passionate about children, and I feel like, okay, I really want to, you know, help children. I want to be able to help some children, you know, with IT skills, because I feel like maybe in their communities, their schools are not so good with this. So I want to help them. I want to be able to do something for them so that they're not left behind. There's no gap between them and the children that, you know, they're not indigent. So what do I do? So maybe I just go online and I'm like, okay, anyone, you know, I've just started this coding lessons now, so anyone can come and be with me. So obviously someone from Nigeria could come, from someone from Oyo State, Nigeria, someone from South Africa, another person from Uganda. While all this is very beautiful, one of the things if we're going to do it like that, then we have to be mindful of how we're going to be able to measure impact. Because, you know, if you're to know if you've not been wasting time or resources, when it's self-funded, most times you tend not to think too much about these things. But when you're spending a donor's money, they are going to want to know if you're making impact. And to be able to measure impact, then you've got to have, you know, a target community. It's always usually better to have a target community. So I'll just touch on that very briefly. So I'm just going to go on to say, you know, you can't, so when you say you have a target community now picked out, you can't just consider their needs, but you've got to consider factors, other factors, such as the current services provided in the area. So for me that wants to, you know, bridge that gap, you know, that gap maybe in the STEM curriculum in the schools with the children. So I have to think, okay, so I've come up with this idea. Are there other people in my community already offering these services? I need to think, because, you know, if there are already people offering this kind of services in my community, do I go to them? Do we work together? Are they open to that kind of partnership? Will I be duplicating efforts if I were to say I'm starting something on my own? You know, how you've got to think of how that is going to work. And, you know, there are no answers to this thing. You just have to know what works for you and your organization. So the next thing that I feel like you need to think about is the stakeholders who may be involved in the project. So say I want to do this now. So am I thinking, okay, am I going to offer them something on my own? If I'm saying that I want to do STEM, you know, like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the ones that I can accomplish in school, yeah, they're there. But how about, you know, the computer part? So if I wanted to offer that kind of thing, what do I need? If the child needs a computer, a laptop, do they have that kind of thing in their school? So if they don't have it in their school, is there a center, a community center where I could go so that I could transfer, you know, the knowledge, you know, to the child? So if there's a community center, that means that I have to talk to the community center people, because they're going to have something to do with it. In essence, they have become stakeholders because they are going to get involved. So the parents, am I just going to be able to just talk to a child without consulting with the parents? Again, you know, that's not possible. So the parents, the guardians, they are stakeholders. The community leaders, do I just get into a community? You know, we talked about having a target community. So am I just going to get into a community and just start a project without, you know, maybe talking to the community head, talking to the influencers or anything? So you've got to know all the stakeholders that will be involved, because it will help you down the line. It will help you down the line as you start. So the next thing that you've got to consider is the community strengths and assets. So like I was saying, is there a community center? You've got to know things like that. So I see a lot of non-profit starts, and, you know, you hear things like, okay, we have to pay for the hall, we have to pay for the chairs and things like that. And most times when I get to speak to them, I see that it's because they haven't considered the strengths and the assets in their community. So many of this community, they could have community centers where you could actually, if you're doing something good in the community, they are always mostly very open to helping you with whatever resources they've got. All you have to do is, you know, formally introduce yourself. Of course, you know, be in good standing, where you are either registered in the community or registered at state level or at federal level, so that, you know, you're showing, you know, a sort of accountability system that you already have within your organization. So you are able to leverage on these strengths without having to spend so much. So it is part of, you know, the competencies of a project manager or the person in charge of the project, to be able to know all these things, like, okay, so what do we have in this community? What are the things that we can leverage? You need to know things like that. And then, of course, lastly, you've got to know national or sector level goals, objectives, and strategies. So, you know, there's a particular organization that, you know, I'm working with on a law that had been ratified by the United Nations that everybody is obviously supposed to get onto. And I think that a lot had been that Nigeria had ratified rather. So of course Nigeria had ratified it, but I'm not sure that it's been, it's been implemented in states already. So one of the things that we're trying to do is go through the law properly, because if sometimes when a country is ratifying a law, it could be slightly different to what has been passed at United Nations level, right? So if they have changed some things, so you have to familiarize yourself with what is happening in that sector, what is nationally acceptable, what is acceptable in your state, because again, what's acceptable nationally could differ at state level. So you need to know all this, and you need to know their strategies as well and their objectives, so that you can key into it and you're not working in silo. Because again, you find a lot of non-profits working in silo, doing their own thing. They're not keying into a general main objective. It is your duty to actually search out these things and know them. It is your duty to search out this thing and know them. That is part of your competencies. You need to know these things, find out what is happening, and of course, then you'll be able to key into whatever is happening per time. And you're not sometimes there are even opportunities at these levels, but if you've never really you've never gone on a courtesy visit, you've never paid them a courtesy visit, you have never formally introduced yourself, you don't know what's happening, you're just doing your own thing, then of course you don't know when there are opportunities. So you owe it to your organization to actually find out. So of course, we're moving on to data collection. We're moving on to data collection now. So why is data collection so important? It's so important, as in, to make meaningful decisions. That means that you have to have collected data. And when we're talking about data, it's about just knowing what obtains per time when it comes to in this case, we're talking about finding out what the need really is, asking people questions. So before you start, of course, you have to consider the purpose of your data collection. Why are you collecting this data? So of course, in a community where, going back to my example of taking children and helping them scale up with STEM curriculum and things like that, I have to find out what's the purpose. Why am I? So if I want to collect data to make an informed decision, what's the purpose of my data collection? In this case, the answer would be that, okay, I want to know, okay, so it'll be some of the questions that I'm wanting to ask, how many children are really in that community? What do they have in all those schools? Do they, are the teachers, how are the teachers? What's the education level of the teachers? Do the children have access to systems in their schools, as in computer systems in their schools? I'm wanting to, that's the content of the data that I am wanting to collect. So I need to know the purpose. And the purpose is for me to know whether my idea, whether the need is actually not imagined by me, to know. So I need to know the purpose. Why am I actually collecting this data? Why, as in, is it a need, or I need to know? And then of course, the human resources required, I need to know. Like, if I'm going to get all this data now, of course, the internet has made things easy. You can actually get data up, online. But then, in this case, we're talking about indigent children that don't have access to computer systems. So, of course, I may have to go into the schools. And we're not talking about one school here. We're talking about a target community, right? So we're talking about a lot of schools. So, of course, I'm going to need people. So I have to sit down and really count the cost, the people that I need. Now, you have to think time frame as well. How long is it going to take to conduct, the data collection and the needs assessment? So when we're talking about needs assessment, really, it's just, in those plain words, you're assessing the needs. Is it a need? So this is a sample table that I put here for, like, when you're wanting to know the purpose, as in, okay, so what do you need to know? What are the local associations and local government and other actors? So talking about stakeholders that I was talking about the other time, who are they? So again, what do we need to know? As in, okay, so this is actually about a particular project, a wash project. So this, they're wanting to build latrines in a particular community. So they're asking, like, okay, if you want to build these latrines in this community, because, you know, we're trying to stop open defecation. So what are the local governments and what are the local associations and who are the other actors? So obviously you want to be talking maybe to the Ministry of Health, right? As in, those are some of your people. You're wanting to talk to maybe the Ministry of Environment. Just, you know, you're just really thinking, who are the major actors? And then you're thinking, how is the household disposal for waste? As in, how is it right now? As in, is it really bad? Are people just really throwing things out without thinking about it? How do they dispose of their waste and things like that? The next one is asking about, how is the commercial and industrial waste disposal? So you're talking, in most communities we have industries, right? So how do they dispose? Are they just openly letting their waste into rivers and things like that? You have to know what obtains. Then the next question is, who, where can we get this information from? Because you're wanting to ask, when we're talking data, you're talking about a lot of questions, really. You're wanting to ask people a lot of questions. So where do we get this data from? So you're talking about meeting with community. So once you have known the associations and all the other actors, so who are they? Who are those people that you're wanting to talk to? So you're talking about meeting with community associations, maybe cooperatives and things like that. So if you're wanting to know how the household disposal is, where are you going to meet the people that are going to answer this question about household disposal? So of course, you know, there are community families. They are the people that work in associations. They are the members of the cooperatives. That's where you're going to meet family people that are in families that are going to answer all these questions. And then of course you're moving into, you know, the question about how is the commercial waste, how is it disposed? Again, you're talking to the community members. So now we're talking about what kind of human resources will be required. So of course you can't just, you can't just pick anybody off of, the streets to come and do this thing. You need experienced field agents, people that when they're talking to people, they're not rubbing people off. As in, this is actually really important. It's very important that you get people that are experienced. So who are the people that you need? So you need people that are experienced. You need to, agents that are just able to do these things. So what kind of budget will be required? So you're talking about the people that are yours, the agents that you're putting on the field. They're going to have to get there somehow. You're talking about transportation. You're talking launch. So they're going to be recording these things. How are they going to be recording it? You're talking about all these things. So to me, there's a budget that sort of covers. So time frame are we talking about? So are we talking about 1 day? Is it going to be done in a day? Is it going to be done in 3 days? Is it going to be done in a week? So these are some of the questions that you want to be asking yourself. So of course, let's move straight on to types of data. So we've got secondary data, we've got primary quantitative data, and we've got primary qualitative data. So for secondary data, you're talking about access that you're not, it's not directly from you, right? They're existing statistics. They're from government documents that you can just lay your hands upon. Maybe if you go into the library or on the internet, literature reviews, you can get this from blogs. You can just get this data off of anywhere, really. And then when we're talking about primary quantitative data, you're talking about household surveys. So this is where you're, maybe through a church or a mosque, you have actually, taken time to ask questions. You're talking about, just standardized tests and surveys, standardized observation using instruments and things like that. And then, the last one is primary qualitative data. So this one is actually the best as far as I'm concerned when it comes to when you're in this sector, because this way you're able to get close to the beneficiaries. So this is where you're going into a community where you're really able to sit with them and discuss and and talk. You're not sitting down in your office designing something. You're not sitting down in your cushy office thinking maybe they need work in this, maybe not have wells, just need or water. I mean, you're really interacting with them, so you're able to get historical narratives. You're really able to get, sometimes that something, and it's a conversation about socio-cultural norms that is affecting this need that you are trying to respond to. So this qualitative data is actually really the best for you, because it expands costs quite a bit, but it is really the best. So we're talking about categories of social needs now. And it's very, very important to have this, because to think about this, because most times as community, as social agent of change, we go into communities, and because of the passion we have, we're very quick to just get on and want to get into these communities and do what we they need. Sometimes these needs, they are sometimes perceived needs, not really what they're needing. So Brad, an American sociologist, has categorized this into 4. And again, this is for triangular data. Because sometimes if you go into a place and you've just gotten your data from one place, you really can't trust what that data says, right? Because it's just one place. And then of course, if you've gotten it from 2 places, as in if you've gotten it from 2 sources, of course they could now be opposing each other, and that leaves you again, could leave you confused. But if you've got more than 2 perspectives, you could triangulate. So what you could end up having at the end of the day is that the results of at least 2 or 3 perspectives to answer a particular question, as in at least 2 of them will reinforce each other. So in this case, let's talk about felt needs. It says here that felt needs, they focus on the thoughts and dreams of the community itself, what they think should be the priority. They are not necessarily the needs, they're just felt needs. They are usually affected by the knowledge and expectation of individuals. It may be realistic or unrealistic, and it may even be unaffordable. An example would be, mothers expressing displeasure, right? It could be about mothers expressing displeasure with the mess, of unsanitary conditions, while, of course, they are unaware of the alternatives that exist to change the currency. As in, people just have this, without really what they are thinking of, what they think should be priority. Just it's about their feelings and things like that. It's mostly associated with wants, right? So we have to know that for what it is. Expressed needs. These are the kind of needs that you are the one that will observe. The community may not, no one in the community may actually even talk about it. But maybe, for example, you see that, okay, people actually really always queue up for a particular service. And when you have asked them, they have not even expressed it to you like a need. So these are some of the things that you want to observe. And these are the expressed needs. They are showing you. They are not necessarily telling you, they're showing you. And then let's move on to normative needs, the kind of needs that compares the current situation to a set of professional standards, as in this one has to do with experts indicating what, as in this is what is expected, their industry standards and things like that. So they're like, this is what is expected. And you are already seeing from what you've observed that maybe the community already falls short. So, it's comparative. There's the industry standard, and then there's the current thing that's, is happening. And then, of course, there's the comparative. This needs to compare the current situation with the situation of others. One of the most common ones is, comparing people's access to resources, maybe, access to mediation and things like that. So it's you need to really think through this. So, of course, we've talked briefly about stakeholders, and I'm just going to talk briefly about, the kind of stakeholders. They're in different categories. So you're talking about to pick them one at a time right now. So what we're picking them from users. These users are the people that would directly benefit from the projects. They are the direct beneficiaries. So in the case of maybe building latrines in a community now, it is the community people. It's the community people that are going to benefit from the community members. So they are the users. Now the governance, of course, will be the project board, the steering groups, all the sponsors that are managing, the governance frameworks, the auditors, the funders, they are the people in the, in the governing part of these projects. So they are the people that they make the decisions and things like that. So you're talking about the providers. These are the individuals who actively participate in the project. So you're talking about the managers, team members, implementing organizations, the contractors that are actually coming to build the thing. So these are your providers, service providers. So we're talking again, influencers. The influencers are the people who have the ability to change the direction of the project, either positively or negatively. And you need to be very, very aware of these people in communities, because they usually dictate the trajectory of your project, whether it's going to be successful or it's not going to be. So on getting into any community, as a social development person, practitioner, you need to be very aware of the influencers. Mostly, yeah, they're community leaders. Sometimes, they're people with business interests, but sometimes there are people that, by virtue of what they have been doing in the communities, people just defer to them. So you need to know who they are and understand them. And that understanding of them is really going to help you. It's going to help move your project forward. It's going to help, the speed that you enjoy. It's going to help, the success rate of the project. Then, of course, you have dependents. These are people that want something from the project other than the planned, the thing that you're actually doing. They are, functional units of the organization that need one of the project deliverables. So they're not necessarily the users, but they usually need something from the project, as in they're dependent on the project for something. And lastly, we're talking about sustainable groups responsible for supporting the project after the project is completed. They're the ones that are going to ensure sustainability. They're the ones that are going to ensure that, the money has not been wasted. So you need to really be aware of all these people. So of course, we're moving to the problems and the objective tree and the solution tree. Now, one of the things that has really helped me, when I found out about this tool, it was really helpful to me because it helps you think through what a problem is. And by the time you're actually going through it, you're able to see that, okay, maybe a need is actually perceived as opposed to it actually being a need, as opposed to it actually being an actual need. So when developing a country, it's very important to begin the process with the identification of the core problem. So I remember, Pastor trying to use this tool in a community. Of course, we're asking them, okay, what do you think? So we're in this trying to women that are doing violence, and so we're trying to say, okay, what do you think is the root cause of violence against women? And the first thing everyone said was, oh, it's money, it's lack of money, it's because they don't have money and things like that. And okay, well, yeah, not having money could be a part of it. It could be, an intermediate problem, but is it a core problem? So of course, in discussing with these women, we're able to delve deeper. We saw that, okay, sometimes it's about, cultural norms, as in the things that people grew up thinking, as in like, a man that grew up thinking that women really have no say in, even a mother is not able to talk to her male child. There are people that grew up in communities like that. And of course, if the woman is trying to say something, of course, the man stands up thinking that it is placed to correct that kind of behavior. So of course, perpetrating violence without actually really thinking of what might be happening or where it is coming from. So we're able to go back to the core of the problem. And of course, the women were able to see that, yeah, well, of course, not having money could be, something that could exacerbate, the situation is far from being the core problem. So, as it says here, it can either be identified via an open brainstorm process with stakeholders, or identify based on preliminary analysis of existing information. So that goes to our data. So maybe if you consult secondary data, you would see that, secondary data is saying that, okay, this particular research that was done in this year and particular research that was done in this community, this was the result. So from pre-existing data, that has been analyzed, you have you are able to arrive at it, but best always going to stakeholders, because they are the ones. Of course, you need to give them, because like we're talking about needs, they are felt needs. And when they were talking about money being a core problem, that was a felt need, because many of them thought, if I just have the money, then maybe I'll be okay. They weren't dealing with many of the things that that come to them through trauma. So they weren't thinking of the fact that money was not really going to change the state of how or how they themselves see themselves like that. So it's always very good to talk it through with the stakeholders. So of course, once a problem tree is completed, the next step is to develop an objective tree. Begins to identify potential interventions that could take place to fix what is broken in the problem tree. So once, of course, we've identified the core problems, then we can start to think of potential interventions, where each statement, in simplest of the mirror image of the problem tree. This is where each statement in the problem tree is transformed into a positive statement. So, for example, okay, the reason why women are being violent, or women are experiencing violence, is because in their community they believe that a girl child is very insignificant. So you could just flip this. A solution will be a community where, so a positive objective statement will now be changing that kind of narrative to a community where they actually believe in equity and equality of the sexes. As in, so, while the problem tree is to display the cause and effect relationship, the objective tree shows the means, to end relationship. And then lastly, the solution tree, it communicates the outcomes and the goals. See, so if we've thought, okay, and in an objective tree, we're wanting to see a society where women and now, women are treated just the way men will be treated. So the solution will be reduced violence, against women. The solution will be access to more money for women. The solution will be more women able to make decisions. So those are the solutions that you're wanting to see. Those are the outcomes and the goals that you're wanting to see. And it's important to note that the solutions tree rather communicates which elements will not enter the scope of the project, because let's face it, you cannot solve the problem of the world, you cannot answer everything. So in here, this is problem as in for the WASH project here, the community members are contributing to poor river water quality because of the unhygienic practice in that is problem. So of course we're looking at the direct effects, lower river water quality, and is affecting the ecosystem. And then of course high incidence waterborne disease in the community. So those are resultant problems. So be a case of, okay, so why, like maybe those women were talking about the fact that it's because women don't have money, that's why they were experiencing violence. No, that would have been a direct effect of the way men in the community were thinking. So that reason, because of the way the men thought, those women were not able to go out to work and they were not able to have money. So of course the cause, so we're again the cause of the problem as people getting openly. The number one cause here the dumping waste in the river, just lack of awareness. So of course, a man that beat wife is just, as in he thought that was something that was right. That's how he grew up. That's what he saw that was done to his mom. That's how he's seen it done since he was a child. He's probably now a 50-something-year-old man. That's what he's seeing life. So those are some of the what they saw. And so you want to know exactly. Right, let me share the screen again. I think it stopped, so I'm going to want to share my screen again. Right. So I'm going to go into the reasons, into the smaller units of the causes. I want to do with the problem tree, and of course, again with the objective tree. Once you have you have identified what a possible solution could be, again you break it down. You break it down until you get to the smallest bits, and then with the solution tree, knowing that of course you as an organization will not be able to tackle everything. You may not be able to do something about everything. So you know your scope. It's going to help you measure your scope, what it is you're going to do, what it is you're in your own way, with the resources that you've got, with the human resources you've got, with the funding that you've got. What is it that you're able to contribute to the changes that you're wanting to? So we're just wanting to know what is there now. What's happening currently? The current, the stakeholder, the power, the power, the influence, their influence in the project. So, you want to identify and again detail the problems that will be addressed. At this point, you're really talking to as many people that are relevant that you want to talk to. You're really brainstorming with a lot of people. You're exploring various sources. You're not stopping at just one line across. Looking at all the problems. So, okay, so someone in education, the state of the education in our so deplorable. I think that's the part that you're passionate about. You're wanting to go to the root of the problem, and you're wanting to consider various root causes. You want to stop one because you want to make sure that you have exhausted the causes that you've come through. You're wanting to go through various causes and direct effects so that you are able to know the problem that you are trying to address. Of course, this book was supposed to use a Venn diagram and have stakeholder analysis matrix, but time will not permit me to go into this. But I guess if I'm able to speak with the organizer, maybe we'll be able to go into that. But these are really important tools that helps you know who you should be dealing with per time. Because obviously you're going to have access to a lot of stakeholders. You're going to, by the time you start, identifying all your stakeholders, you're going to have a lot of people in mind. But should they all be consulted with? Because again, you don't have all the time, you don't have all the resources. So who are the people that you should be consulting with? So you're going to be able to determine all of that. And for future state analysis, it's never really simple, because here you're going to have to ask a lot of questions and make a lot of assumptions. It's a broad spectrum of potential intervention to respond to the problem that you have identified. So it's, no, like we said earlier, no one organization is able to do everything. So at this point, of course, you're going to have to ask really serious questions. You're going to have to talk about the scope, how big do you want this to be? How far do you want to take this? How far do you want to take it? Are you wanting to work in just one community? Are you wanting to work in the whole state? Because again, if you say that you're working there, then of course you must be equipped to respond to the project. People, you can't pick such a huge scope, and then people come to you, after announcing that, of course, you're doing, doing your project announcement and things like that, and then, of course, you're not able to do what you're supposed to do. That's heartbreaking for the beneficiary. So, of course, you have to determine, what the scope of the project will be. Where will the project intervene? So, for, let's say, for women going through violence, wanting to respond to the health part of it. If you look at a woman who has gone through violence, there's the physical part that obviously has attended to. There's the mental part that has to be attended to. And of course, you're going to need some things as well. Sometimes they need shelter and things like that. So you have to know what part of the project that you're wanting to respond to. You want to know what services you will be providing, and you want to know who will be served, who is going to be served. So sometimes, is it the children of the person going through violence that you're wanting to serve, or you're wanting, as in there are different things that affect this same problems. So you have to focus. What are you wanting to do? Because obviously no one can do it all. So I think that's how far we can actually go today with project design. And I think obviously we started with we've just picked one part. So next we're going to be moving on to implementation, right? We're going to be moving on to project setup. We're going to be moving on to project setup. We're going to be moving into project planning, implementation, and then of course, project closure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope you've been able to glean, learn a thing or two. And I hope that what you've seen here is going to, help you further as you plan and design projects in your communities. Thank you very much.